Part 106. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1051. Chapter 1051 Independent Dormitory. The principal should know, Wang Shui said. How can I not tell him such important news? He didn't say anything after hearing it. So I suspect, it's possible that the thing you just talked about was not caused by Li Bingman. It's a ghost, but it was requested by Secretary Zhou. Such a weird request. I think Xiaoling doesn't even know it herself. Wang Shui shrugged. Who knows the thoughts of those big shots? Let me tell you. She lowered her voice. It would be better if this little girl's backer is really Secretary Zhou, but you know who Secretary Zhou's big boss is well, if it's that one. Zhang Qin and Bao Ziyulai looked at each other in horror, and suddenly thought of a possibility. If the background of this little girl is actually the Emperor's big boss Pei Xian, and they are just borrowing Secretary Zhou's hand for a show, then whoever offends Xiaoling will die. We promise not to tell anyone about this. They covered their mouths tightly, their lives were at stake. Xiaoling dragged her big suitcase and lined up to get her dormitory number. Many people in the team were peeking at her. Who said she was the latest hot topic? Xiaoling noticed those gazes and didn't pay much attention to them. Because of her outstanding beauty, she had long been accustomed to being noticed and saluted by all kinds of people. She hummed softly and waited patiently for the team to move. You sing so beautifully, a little girl from behind chatted up to her. Hello, Xiaoling, I heard you sing during the finals. It was so beautiful. It's really unforgettable for me. Xiaoling turned her head and saw a girl standing behind her, about the same age as her, looking at her with a shy smile. Who are you? She said to the girl. Thank you for complimenting my singing. This girl is one of the few who doesn't like to hang out with Li Bingman. She said to Xiaoling, my name is Xia Xiaoling. Your singing is very nice and contagious. You will definitely make your debut in the future. Yeah, I think so too. Xiaoling liked to be praised very much. Her eyes lit up when she heard this. Xia, you have such a discerning eye. Let me tell you, the appeal of music is actually amazing. Two girls started chatting in the team. The team moved forward in an orderly manner. Many freshmen who had received dormitory numbers checked with others to see if they were in the same dormitory. Xia looked at them longingly and said to Xiaoling, I heard that this is a dormitory for 6 people per room. I don't know who I will live with. I hope I can meet a good roommate. Xiaoling is also looking forward to it. It would be great if we could live together. Don't you know? Xia glanced at her in surprise. What do you know? Xiaoling was confused. Xia said, you are the chief of the academic year. All the previous chiefs of the academic year have a separate room. They will definitely not be crowded together with me. I really envy you. You have so much freedom in a single room. Xiaoling said, is that so? I really don't know. Ever since she won the first place in the finals, she hadn't cared much about the follow-up. During this period, apart from learning etiquette and decorating Pei Xian's home, she was just thinking about things. How can I make a unique iris bookmark for Brother Pei? She was also happy when she suddenly heard that she could live in a single room. Well, that way I won't disturb others when I practice singing and dancing. In the past, in the orphanage, several children were crowded into one dormitory. Every time Xiaoling wanted to practice singing and dancing, she had to find another place. However, the orphanage did not have a dedicated music classroom, so she could only practice in the garden or on the playground. She was often rushed here and there. Her dream at that time was to have an independent dormitory. Now, it's finally come true. She dragged her suitcase and lined up in the queue, and finally it was her turn. The logistics teacher checked her student ID number and looked a little strange. Are you Xiaoling? The chief of this academic year? The dormitories in the training camp are all full now. I can't spare a single room for the freshman chief, so you can study there as a day student. Ah. What? Not only Xiaoling was on the scene, but many freshmen who heard these words were also stunned. Is that right? Day student? The Emperor's training camp is obviously a closed management system. When did day students be allowed to attend? As if to answer their doubts, the logistics teacher said, it stands to reason that day study is not allowed in the training camp, but you are the chief, and since there is no independent room, you can only make an exception to this exception. Xiaoling glanced at Xiahua beside her, thought for a while, and said, it's okay, teacher, I can squeeze in with other students and let Xiahua and I live in the ordinary dormitory. How can that be done? The logistics teacher said, you are the chief. How can the chief mix with other students? It will break the rules. What is the chief? The chief is a special case, a role model. He is different. You don't want anything. I said it, go and prepare for day study. Day study is not an injustice to you, it is a symbol of honor, understand? Ah, Xiaoling was stunned, unable to react. Xiahua was very envious, and whispered to Xiaoling, Xiaoling, you don't know, right? There is no precedent for day students in the history of the training camp. You are really being cared for as a day student. You don't have to be under unified military management. How happy you are. Ah, if this thing spreads, I don't know how many people will envy you. Xiaoling seemed to understand a little bit, then let me go back and ask the parents. She can't make the decision on such a big matter, and she doesn't really like day schooling. Although the villa is not far from here, it takes an hour to go back and forth. If you waste 1 hour on the road every day, how much time will be wasted in a year? She promised Brother Pei that he would become the best artist. It would be great if the wasted time could be used to make connections. She decided to go back and ask Brother Pei if he could get her to live on campus. When the logistics teacher saw that she wanted to go back and ask the parents, he said with a straight face, I hope you can communicate well with the parents and not hinder the decision of the training camp. Xiaoling didn't like others talking to her like this, and she felt a little uncomfortable, but she didn't want to cause trouble, so she held it back. She originally came to report happily, but things turned out to be like this. She left the place where she received her accommodation registration list listlessly, dragging a big box, and went through the procedures to receive textbooks alone. In my heart, when I walked, I lost my way. When she came to her senses, she found that she was already in the girls' dormitory area, with freshmen carrying their luggage coming and going. Not far away, several girls dressed up in gorgeous clothes were chattering around Li Bingman. Sister Bingman, which dormitory is yours? Let's help you move your things. Thank you, Li Bingman smiled elegantly and reservedly, Noah 001, third floor. Ah, suddenly, a girl exclaimed, Noah 001, I heard from the dormitory and before that that is a separate room reserved for the chief freshman. I'm exhausted from climbing the mountain. Now my mind is slow and my writing speed has dropped significantly. There will be 2 more updates tonight. Let's get up and read it tomorrow morning. It will definitely be past midnight 555. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1052. Chapter 1052, You Have Been Wronged. Xiaoling stopped and asked for a separate room for the new chief. Isn't that her room? Why did the logistics teacher tell her that there was no independent room? I heard another girl say, chief freshman? The title of chief freshman of this year is not worthy of the name. Only Sister Bingman is the real chief. Sister Bingman deserves to live here. That's right, said the other girls. Li Bingman smiled. She was in a good mood. She didn't expect that she could get this room. It must be that the teachers at the training camp didn't dare to offend her sister, So they sent the country girl away and gave her the room. Humph, a country girl is a country girl. Do you think having a little talent is a big deal? The training camp is just a small entertainment circle, not just those with good talent can get everything. Many times, background and strength are more important than talent. Help me carry this pot of Milanese up, Li Bingman told the girls surrounding her, be careful not to break it. There is also the set of teacups that my sister brought back to me when she attended an event in France. The organizer, the handmade souvenirs given by Fang are unique in the world, so be careful when you are like this. Don't worry, Sister Bingman, several girls responded, praising and helping to move things. Li Bingman, with an elegant and reserved smile, led them upstairs with empty hands. Unexpectedly, she stopped after taking a few steps. She saw Xiaoling standing in the middle of the entrance steps, glaring at her with an evil expression. Get out of the way, Li Bingman said condescendingly. Xiaoling did not move. Next to the big suitcase, the girl who had not yet developed much looked a little short. The private room is mine, she still stared at Li Bingman and said every word. Ha ha ha, many people laughed, is it yours? Then go to the school, why are you pestering Sister Bingman? You bumpkin, the examiners saw you pitifully that day and rewarded you with a chief dang dang. Do you think you are really the chief? Gun gun, a good dog doesn't stand in the way. You are the dog, Xiaoling was so angry that she almost cried. Why are these people so excessive? The classmates bullied her, and the training camp also bullied her. Even if he didn't allocate a room to her, he even tricked her into day study and assigned the room that was supposed to be hers to Li Bingman. She couldn't swallow this breath. The room is mine, she looked at Li Bingman angrily, you are not allowed to stay. Li Bingman chuckled, the teacher arranged it for me. If you have the ability, go to the teacher. As he said that, he ducked and walked around her lightly, and led the people upstairs. Girls passed by her carrying large and small bags, chatting and laughing, but no one took her seriously. Some even looked at her as if she were a joke. The girl who was walking at the end stopped and said jokingly, be good, country bumpkin. If you offend anyone in the training camp, you can't offend Sister Bingman. Do you understand? If you know what's going on, go to Bingman immediately, sister, admit your mistake, and then you compete again, and if you lose to her, maybe she will take pity on you and forgive you. Bah, Xiaoling scolded, crazy. The girl's expression changed, you don't know what's good and what's good, she deserved to be ostracized by Li Bingman. The girl turned her head and walked away. Xiaoling was left standing alone on the steps, with the students coming and going pointing at her. She looked at the golden sunshine of late summer, raised her head high, and put on her most arrogant expression so as not to make others laugh. She dragged her big suitcase and groped all the way to the logistics office. Teacher, she gasped and stood at the door, asking angrily, didn't you say there is no room? Why can Li Bingman live in a single room, but I have to go to day school? This is not fair, the entire logistics department listened. Hearing her yelling, he raised his head to look at her. The teacher who assigned the dormitory earlier rubbed his forehead and felt that this little girl was really disturbing. How did you know that Li Bingman lived in a private room? Since she was a day student, there was an extra private room. The teacher accidentally mentioned this when chatting with others, and teacher Chen suggested that Li Bingman be given a private room. The teacher thought about it, and it was okay. After all, Li Bingman was Li Binjiao's sister, and it was a good favor to sell her. Neither of them knew Xiaoling's origins. Just like what many ordinary people guessed, they both thought it was the Li sisters who didn't like Xiaoling and used their connections to drive her away. Then, it is logical to give a single room to Li Bingman. However, Hu wasted no time in passing the words to Xiaoling. Xiaoling said, I saw it with my own eyes. I don't care, that single room should be mine, I want to live in a single room. The rooms have been allocated. What are you talking about? The logistics teacher scolded her. The camp allows you to study day out because they care about you. Go back as soon as possible after receiving the teaching materials. We have to come to class tomorrow. Then why don't you value Li Bingman? You're just bullying me. The little girl is not afraid of her. Huh, why do you value her? She has to waste an hour on the road every day as a day student. It is obviously an hour less than other people's training time. She is suspicious. It was Li Bingman who deliberately made trouble with her and framed her to go to day school. The logistics teacher was extremely angry. What nonsense! While cursing, the door to the inner office opened. It was Zhang Qin, the logistics director. She heard the noise outside and went out to take a look. I don't think it's a big deal, and I'm so shocked. This well-established little princess with Secretary Zhou's back is actually being scolded by her subordinates. What happened? She scolded her subordinates with a sullen face. What are you yelling about in the office? Is this your attitude towards students? The teacher was stunned by her scolding. Zhang Qin usually didn't say much good things to his subordinates, but he never scolded them. What happened today? Is Auntie here? She composed herself and then said to Zhang Qin, Director, it's not that I want to curse, it's that this little girl is too ignorant and wants to steal Li Bingman's room. She pointed out the words Li Bingman, hinting at which side Zhang Qin should support. Zhang Qin was extremely angry with her. It was a good thing, but Xiaoling agreed to go to day school and passed away calmly. This idiot wants to give Li Bingman the room Xiaoling vacated? Isn't this an intentional attempt to bring these two eldest ladies into conflict? Both of these people have great backgrounds, and it's hard to offend either of them. Isn't this stupid subordinate looking for trouble for the logistics department? Who asked you to give the dormitory to Li Bingman on your own initiative? Zhang Qin was angry. Other people in the office looked at each other in shock. Did Director Zhang really take a shot today? Even the Li sisters lost their face. The teacher felt aggrieved and didn't know where he went wrong. Zhang Qin was very angry, but she still had to help her subordinate Zhu deal with the aftermath. While she was thinking quickly to try to solve the problem, she said to Xiaoling, our logistics department did not do its job well and made a mistake, so I feel wronged. I underestimated how hard it would be to climb the mountain. I was really tired last night, so I planned to sleep until 3 a.m. to write, but then I overslept. 555 I'm sorry everyone. This is yesterday's second update. Today I will make up for yesterday's third update during the day. There will be tonight's third update tonight. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1053. Chapter 1053 Tears. Everyone was shocked. Did Director Zhang travel through time today? Why is she so polite to a student? Even if this student is the chief freshman, she has offended Li Bingman. The chief is just a name, Li Bingman's family background is the real thing. Director Zhang should be clear about which side to support. They looked at each other with blank expressions on their faces. Xiaoling was still angry. I don't care, that single room is mine. Zhang Qin scolded her pig subordinate many times in her heart. She was really looking for trouble. I finally managed to coax this little ancestor to go to day school as the principal wanted, but now I'm at odds again. Xiaoling, Zhang Qin put on her most gentle and amiable smile, and said patiently, the teacher knows that you feel aggrieved, and no matter who is involved in such a thing, he will be unhappy. But the logistics department didn't do it on purpose. You guys, this morning at the time of the report, I asked you to study as a day student because there was really no room. Who knew that an extra room was temporarily available and you were not there at the time, so I arranged it for Li Bingman. Why does she live in a single room? Only the head student can live there, Xiaoling was indignant. The teacher next to Zhang Qin wanted to tell her that she was Li Binjiao's sister. However, after taking a look at Zhang Qin, who looked very abnormal, she managed to hold back her words. Zhang Qin smiled bitterly and comforted Xiaoling, "This is our school's mistake. Students should not be held responsible. Xiaoling, look, the room has already been assigned to Li Bingman. It will be very painful if we kick her out again. She has a lot of self-respect, and we can't hurt her because of our mistakes, so we can only let her continue to live there." Xiaoling understands the truth. If it were someone with no grievances or grudges, she wouldn't care. But Li Bingman is not a person without any grievances. It doesn't matter to me whether it hurts her self-esteem or not. In fact, Xiaoling was still eager for her to hurt her self-esteem. As the chief freshman, my house was robbed. Who will be responsible for my self-esteem? Looking at the aggressive little girl, Zhang Qin had a severe headache. She didn't dare to drive Li Bingman out of the single room. Wouldn't that be a serious offense? But the little girl in front of her couldn't afford to offend her, so she had to coax patiently, "Of course you are the chief freshman. Even if Li Bingman lives in a single room, it doesn't mean anything. Otherwise, the school will send a special car to take you to and from school, so you can enjoy. You are the first person to receive such treatment since the establishment of the training camp." Xiaoling snorted coldly, "Who wants your broken car?" She was so angry that she didn't even care about respecting her teachers. If she wanted to go to school as a day student, would she still need a school car to take her to and from school? Brother Pei can send her a Rolls-Royce. She just wants justice. Zhang Qin's face couldn't help but change when she was scolded in front of so many subordinates. Even though she knew in her heart that this little girl had a big background, she still felt vaguely disgusted. She suppressed her temper. In short, it is impossible to ask Li Bingman to move out. The school will compensate you separately. Xiaoling, it's getting late today. You should go back and talk to the adults at home about this matter first. I believe you, the adults will definitely be reasonable. Are you saying I'm unreasonable? The little girl was almost furious. Zhang Qin wanted to slap this naughty kid. Why is he so good at catching words? She took a deep breath and told herself to calm down, and said, "Anyway, you go back first and let your parents tell you if you have any opinions." "You want to meet my parents?" Seeing Zhang Qin driving her away, Xiaoling was so angry that she couldn't help but speak. Brother Pei is so busy every day, why bother him for such a trivial matter? She was so stupid that she couldn't handle this problem well and got into so much trouble on the first day of registration. The little girl's nose was sore and she wanted to cry. However, next to Zhang Qin, the teacher who assigned the dormitory also scolded her. "Oh, who do you think you are? You are a parent who can't even afford a BMW. Why are you so blind? Why don't you apologize to Director Zhang?" "That's enough." Zhang Qin gave the teacher a stern look. "Why is this person such a pig? Isn't it enough that he is afraid of offending Xiaoling? This year's professional title rating must be the lowest for her. Necessary." The teacher was shocked to realize that the flattery had been slapped on the horse's feet, and he shut up in dismay. Other onlookers thought that Zhang Qin became angry because a little girl scolded her in public, and did not think about the fact that the little girl had a background. So they lowered their heads and pretended to do their own thing, but secretly raised their eyebrows. Ears eavesdrop on how things will end. Zhang Qin's face turned blue and white, and she wanted to give the little girl a good lesson, but considering that she came in Secretary Zhou's car, she couldn't afford to give her a lesson. That sentence, "just because you want to meet my parents," is really frightening. However, if she didn't teach her a lesson, wouldn't she lose face in front of so many subordinates? After a few seconds of awkward silence, Zhang Qin said stiffly, "Anyway, you go back first." "I don't. There will be no results if you stand here. If you don't leave, I will have to call your parents. The emergency contact number is listed on the admission form, which can be found at a glance. To conceal her identity, Xiaoling filled in the housekeeper's contact information, but she knew very well that if the school really called the housekeeper's uncle would tell Pei Ziyan everything. She really didn't want to trouble Brother Pei for such a trivial matter. Brother Pei probably thought she was weak. The little girl's nose started to feel sore again. She held back her tears, gave Zhang Qin a fierce look, turned around and dragged her big suitcase out. Zhang Qin originally wanted to ask someone to help her move, but she had just been humiliated in front of so many subordinates. Where would her dignity be if she were to stick to them again? So, she snorted coldly and turned back to her independent office. Xiaoling dragged her suitcase out of the school gate. At the school gate, all kinds of luxury cars for new students were scattered, making it look a bit desolate. Only the driver of the Pei family was still leaning next to the BMW, looking at the scenery quietly. "Miss, why are you out?" When he saw Xiaoling, he hurriedly went up to her and took the big trolley suitcase in her hand. "Let me come. The luggage is so heavy. Don't be tired." The little girl's nose was a little red and her voice was low. "Uncle Li, why haven't you left yet?" Driver Li had been given instructions a long time ago and knew that she was going to study on a day trip, so of course he stayed here to wait for her. But this cannot be said to her clearly. The driver laughed dryly and said, "After seeing you off, I had a meal nearby and rested for a while. I was about to leave, but you happened to come out. Miss, why don't you live on campus?" Xiaoling was listless. "Let's talk about it when we get home." Without waiting for the driver to open the door, he opened the door of the back seat to get into the car. Unexpectedly, the forehead hit the car frame, and a large bag was instantly bulging. "Ouch," she cried out in pain, tears oozing out all of a sudden. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1054. Chapter 1054 Strawberry Ice Cream. The driver was putting luggage in the trunk. He turned his head when he heard the noise and was startled. "Miss, are you okay?" He hurriedly closed the trunk and came over to check the injury on her forehead. She shook her head with 2 bags of tears in her eyes, pushed the driver's hand away, and bent down to get into the back seat of the car. The driver had no choice but to go to the cab and drive. The car drove along the bustling street, with high-rise buildings and pedestrians passing by. Xiaoling curled up, covered her forehead, and quietly let her tears flow freely. Scenes of the grievances she had suffered since joining the training camp came to mind. Was she too naive? In this world, it would be difficult for her to move forward without background and power. Is she wrong to insist on entering the training camp on her own? She cried for a long time, like a wounded little animal facing its own wounds alone. Unknowingly, she heard the driver say, "Miss, we're home." She opened the car door without saying a word and entered the house. It was only 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Pei Ziyan hadn't returned home yet. Zhou Ma, who was cleaning the house, came up to him and was startled when he saw her eyes red from crying. "Miss, what happened?" She still said nothing, went upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom. Zhou's mother watched her leave worriedly, and then looked at the driver in confusion. "What happened?" "I don't know," the driver said. "When I got in the car, I accidentally bumped into the car door and started crying, but I think the lady was sad for something else." Zhou's mother nodded, turned to the kitchen, prepared Xiaoling's favorite strawberry ice cream, put it in a crystal clear bowl, and knocked on Xiaoling's door. "Miss, please open the door." There was no movement at the door. Zhou's mother knocked again. Miss. A muffled voice came from inside. "What's the matter?" "Today's strawberries are particularly good," Zhou Ma paused and said. I mentioned it to my husband this morning and he said you like strawberry ice cream the most and asked me to pick the biggest and sweetest one for you. Shall I bring it in for you? The door opened, and Xiaoling stood at the door with red and swollen eyes, her voice a little hoarse. I was supposed to stay in the training camp today, why did Brother Pei ask you to make ice cream for me at home? Ma Zhou was stuck for a moment, secretly cursing herself for being confused, and made up a lie on the spur of the moment and almost exposed the truth. This ice cream was not ordered by Pei Ziyan. She saw that Xiaoling was in a bad mood, so she made it to comfort the little girl. She smiled and rounded off her words as if nothing had happened. Sir, you originally asked me to send it to you in the evening. Xiaoling lowered her eyes and glanced at the crystal bowl. The beautiful pink ice cream was dotted with mint and strawberry. The rich milk fragrance and the sweetness of the frosting were extremely tempting. She stretched out her hand to take it. Thank you, Mother Zhou. She stopped crying, hugged the ice cream and bent her legs to sit on the sofa, eating it bit by bit with a small spoon. Ma Zhou took advantage of the situation and walked over and sat down next to her. Miss, is there something on your mind? Who bullied you? She ate the ice cream bit by bit, and it took a long time before she said, it's okay. After a while, the teacher said there are not enough beds and won't let me live on campus. Do you think Brother Pei will be angry if he finds out? Is this what you were worried about in the first place? Zhou Ma breathed a sigh of relief, but also felt a little distressed. The young lady still didn't know that all this was her husband's plan, so she was crying in vain. It was really heartbreaking to watch. She couldn't help smoothing Xiaoling's hair. Sir, he is very kind to you. How can he be angry about such a trivial matter? If you come back, it will be too late for him to be happy. He wants to be with you so much. He's not even angry. Xiaoling was about to cry again. Those people in the training camp are so bad. Angry, angry. Zhou's mother was so frightened that she kept saying that she didn't dare to make this little ancestor cry again. After a pause, he asked cautiously, is it someone from the training camp who made you unhappy? Yes. Xiaoling dug the strawberries bit by bit with a small spoon, but didn't eat them. They all ostracized me. Zhou's mother looked at the girl in front of her with pity. It must be hard to be ostracized, right? I heard that the young lady was ostracized by other children in the orphanage because she was too beautiful and liked by many adoptive families. Later, when she entered the Pei family, the girls in the Pei family also regarded her as an alien. Unexpectedly, she is here now. Training camp, too. Sometimes, being beautiful is a good thing, but it's really hard to say whether being too beautiful or outstanding and lacking enough background is a blessing or a curse. Zhou's mother said sympathetically, it's not your fault, it's because they don't understand how good you are. Under her gentle words, the little girl's heart was soothed. Xiaoling sniffed, as if saying to herself, yes, it's their fault, I didn't do anything wrong. Then she raised her head and looked at Zhou's mother. Zhou's mother, don't tell Brother Pei that I cried, okay? Good. It was so embarrassing, and she didn't want Pei Ziyan to worry. Zhou's mother smiled and said, okay, I'll get you an ice towel. You lie down and apply it on your eyes. Otherwise, your eyes will be red. Sir, you can tell at a glance. After saying that, she really went to twist the ice towel. Xiaoling applied it obediently and fell into sleep without even realizing it. In the dream, she was surrounded by a group of people, including the older children from the orphanage, Pei Jingyu and them, and Li Bingman and her followers. They ridiculed her, laughed at her, and threw rotten eggs and stones at her. I am not a little beggar that no one wants. In her dream, she shouted softly. Opening her eyes, she found Pei Ziyan standing close to Chi Chi, with her head resting on his lap and her body covered with his suit jacket. The light was dim, and he was leaning on the sofa reading a financial report, his brows slightly wrinkled, his expression a bit grim. Brother Pei. She rubbed her eyes and sat up. How could I? How did she sleep on his lap? Pei Zion lowered his head and saw that she was awake. His slightly frowned brows relaxed. "Are you hungry?" When he said this, she turned her head and glanced out the window. It turned out that it was already dark. "I'm not hungry," she said softly. She had just woken up and her voice was still a little confused. "You're back." "It's been a while since I've been back," he said gently, putting the suit jacket that had slipped off her shoulders back on her body. "Have you ever cried?" "Huh?" She was slightly startled. "How do you know? Didn't she put ice on her eyes?" Pei Zion said warmly, "What don't I know? Even if Joe's mother asked her to apply ice to her eyes, the child was obviously sad and was still crying in her sleep." At this moment, his eyes were red like a rabbit. Xiaoling felt aggrieved. "You don't know a lot of things." As I spoke, I felt like crying again. "What don't I know? Tell me." He put aside the financial report at hand, put his arms around her, and held her in his arms, stroking the top of her hair with his chin, a very soft touch. These days, the two of them live in the same bedroom. He often helps her put on quilts and coats, and sometimes they have some physical contact, which she does not reject. Xiaoling found a comfortable position in his arms and began to talk about what happened in the training camp today. "Today I am in Baihaba, a small village on the border of China. The scenery here is beautiful, but the signal is a pitfall 555. After half an hour of hard work, I finally connected. There will be 2 more updates tonight." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1055. Chapter 1055 Domestication and Disputes. Pei Zion's face became darker the more he listened. He had asked the training camp to coax her into studying day out, but that didn't mean he could condone those people bullying her. He lowered his head and looked at the little girl in his arms. "Li Bingman and those teachers will be taught a lesson." She raised her head from his arms. "Well, I want to get the single room back. Let her and the teacher apologize to me." Under the warm orange light, Pei Zion looked gloomy and unpredictable. "Isn't it good to go to school?" Xiaoling became angry when she talked about this. "It was my teacher who bullied me when I was in day school. If you spend an extra hour on the road every day, you will lose an hour of practice time. Brother Pei, I promised you that you will become famous. Why don't you practice for an hour less every day, okay?" The little girl said very seriously, filled with indignation. "Li Bingman must be afraid that I will surpass her." Pei Zion. He has never thought about this problem. In his opinion, what does it matter if he practices 1 more hour or 1 less hour? It would be serious to spend more time with him at home. However, looking at the little girl's flushed face, Pei Zion decided not to add fuel to the fire. He just said, "I don't want you to tire your body. It doesn't matter if you practice for a shorter time every day." She shook her head stubbornly. "I want to do my best and can't embarrass you." He smiled. "Silly girl, it doesn't matter." She clenched her little fist stubbornly. "It does matter, it matters too much. Anyway, I have to live on campus and drive Li Bingman out of the single room. If I lose the first battle of school, how can I win in the future? Xiahua told me, the situation in the entertainment industry will be more complicated in the future, and I have to learn how to fight." "Who is Xiahua?" "My new friend." Her eyes flickered. She said, "Living on campus is really fun." Pei Zion was still very gentle. "You said that you don't want to use your privileges and you have to rely on your own ability in everything. If that happens, the training camp will not allow you to live on campus." Xiaoling had never thought about this issue before, so she struggled for a while and asked without giving up, "The teacher asked me to come back and tell my parents. Isn't it okay if the parents don't agree?" Pei Zion smiled and said, "If I were an ordinary parent and argued with them about this matter, the final result would be that you would be expelled from school. The Emperor's training camp has always been very strong, and I'll be honest with you. Ah, Xiaoling fell into deep melancholy. Although she wants to live on campus, she doesn't want to be dropped out of school. If she is dropped out of school, how can she become more powerful? The little girl was very confused. Pei Ziyan smiled again. He knew about his own training camp. In fact, the situation was not as serious as he said. If he were an ordinary trainee, he might be ordered to drop out of school. However, the little girl in front of him has amazing musical talent, expelling a good talent who can sing dolphin sounds from school. The principal will be fired. It's a pity that Xiaoling can't figure out the twists and turns. She struggled back and forth and asked weakly, "Brother Pei, can you use your privileges to get me back to the training camp? You don't have to kick Li Bingman out, just get me back to the training camp to live on campus. I want to do it myself. Get Li Bingman out." Pei Ziyan said, "Not good." Huh, she didn't expect this answer and raised her head in surprise. Since being adopted, Pei Ziyan has been asking for everything from her, but what happened this time? Just listen to Pei Ziyan say, "Xiaoling, either you can go to school obediently on your own, or you can rely on my arrangements. I will announce your identity, drive Li Bingman out in an open and fair manner, and even make her kneel in front of you and cry and beg for mercy. Everyone will treat you like a princess, and you will get everything more beautiful than Li Bingman. No one will say anything bad about you, everyone will greet you with a smile, and you can do anything you want." "But, I just want to live on campus," she whispered aggrievedly. She had heard enough rumors, and she didn't want others to point fingers and say that she was lawless because of Pei Ziyan. Pei Ziyan said, "Xiaoling, this is power. You either admit it and enjoy it, or you don't care about the benefits it brings. I don't like you hiding it. In fact, these are not the real reasons." The reason was that he couldn't bear to let her live on campus, so he gave so many reasons in a serious manner. Xiaoling felt even more aggrieved. "You bullied me too." Her eyes were red, like a child who couldn't get candy. Pei Ziyan coaxed her, "Be good." He reached out and tried to take her into his arms, but she dodged him. "Xiaoling," he emphasized his tone slightly. She was in a bad mood. She had suffered a lot in the training camp today. In the office of the logistics department, the only belief that supported her to hold her head high and walk out with disdain was Pei Ziyan. She fully thought that Pei Ziyan would comfort her after returning home, but who knew that he would not agree to help her? In her heart, besides Xiaoyu, the person she loves the most is him. His lack of support made her feel even worse than the bullying by Li Bingman and others. She wanted to cry again, but was afraid that the tears would really flow out. She turned her head away from him and stopped looking at him. She jumped off the sofa and returned to her little bed, lying down fully clothed with her back to him. Pei Ziyan sat on the sofa in the bedroom and did not move. He looked at her somewhat thin figure through the gauze screen. After a moment, he picked up the financial report and continued to read attentively. Xiaoling lay with her back to him for a long time, hoping in her heart that he would come to comfort her. However, a long time passed and he did not move. She listened carefully and heard the rustle of paper turning, so she guessed that he was probably reading those boring reports again. Outside the window, a crescent moon hung high in the night sky. She looked at the crescent moon, and the boundless loneliness suddenly came over her. She thought of how lonely and wandering she had been all these years, and finally couldn't hold back and shed tears silently. "Xiaoling is sick. When I got up the next day, my face was pale, and when I took my temperature, I had a low fever." Joe's mother looked at her worriedly. "Miss, why don't you take a day off and ask for leave from the training camp?" Xiaoling weakly held the fork and sat on the high chair. She glanced sideways at Pei Ziyan, who was reading the newspaper and eating toast. "I don't," she said softly to Joe's mother, "I have to go to class. If you don't rely on him, don't rely on him." "What's the big deal?" Pei Ziyan looked up from the newspaper and glanced at her, Have a good rest at home. The training camp teachers don't like me to begin with. If I take a break, they will only hate me even more, she said sadly, with a bit of anger. Peizian knew that she was still angry about what happened last night, but he didn't want to tolerate her temper. It didn't matter how wantonly she acted, but she couldn't go against his will. He wants to teach her how to be obedient. Mother Joe, he told his maid, tell the driver not to send the lady off, and ask the housekeeper to call the doctor. Joe's mother responded, yes. Xiaoling put down her fork heavily and suddenly lost control of her temper. She yelled at Peizian, I'm going to class. You said I couldn't use my privileges. What's the point of keeping me at home now? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1056. Chapter 1056, Running Away from Home. Peizian's tone was gentle but tough. It is human nature to take a break when sick, and it is not a privilege. Xiaoling glared at him, I'm going to class. She didn't know why she was so stubborn. It was probably because he was so mean to her yesterday that she didn't want to obey today. Her cheeks gradually turned a bright red due to excitement and illness, and she looked extremely beautiful under the light of the morning sun. Something in Peizian's heart moved slightly. But he still refused to give in. Driver Li has a day off today. Xiaoling was angry, if you don't let him send me off, I'll go by myself. As she said that, she didn't know where she got the strength to put down her fork, turned around and rushed out of the house. Miss, Joe's mother called worriedly from behind. She chased him for a few steps, then looked back at Peizian, Sir. Peizian sat still and said, let her go. Joe's mother was so anxious that she stamped her feet, Miss, you are still so young, unfamiliar with the place, and you are still sick. What if something happens to you alone outside? Sir, you can't ignore it. Peizian said, find someone to follow her and don't let her find out. He just wanted to temper her temper and let her know that it would be difficult to move without him, so that she would obey him obediently in the future. Joe's mother knew his temper and knew that she couldn't persuade him, so she had to find the housekeeper in a hurry. Xiaoling ran far away alone, until she reached the outskirts of the Pei family villas. She stood at the crossroads and was blown away by the wind before she came back to her senses. She was in a hurry, and she was only wearing a sleeveless dress. It was a bit cold standing in the late summer and early autumn wind. Which way should the training camp go? She didn't know. She had only gone there once yesterday to report for work. Only if she could remember the way would there be ghosts. However, she didn't give up. Didn't Peizian not let her go? She wanted to go. Having no money on me. Since she was adopted, although she has good food and clothing, she has no need for money. Yesterday, she was going to a training camp to stay. Peizian gave her a bank card, but she put the card in her luggage. Didn't take it out of the box. She searched her body and found only a mobile phone. She turned on the GPS navigation on her mobile phone and walked towards the training camp while finding the way. It takes half an hour to drive, and it's definitely not a short walk with a little girl's feet and a fever. It's normal to walk for a whole day. But she was so stubborn and moved forward unyieldingly. Not far behind her, where she didn't notice, the housekeeper kept following her. The housekeeper would pass the news to Joe's mother on the phone from time to time, and then Joe's mother would pass the news to Peizian. The lady has crossed the intersection. Miss, you turned left into Zhongai Street. The lady seemed to be going to a training camp and was asking for directions. Beazipu's mother told her that she could take the bus. Miss didn't take the car. She probably didn't have any money. She walked along Zaiwei Road very slowly. She stopped several times to rest. Her face didn't look good. Pei Xian's face doesn't look very good either. She is sick, so why bother? You obviously have your mobile phone with you, but you don't know how to give him a call and give in. Let her go, he said sullenly, I want to see how long she will be stubborn. Sir, Joe's mother was anxious, Mrs. Body can't bear it. Pei Xian was unmoved. Xiaoling didn't know how long she had been walking. She was gradually sweating on her body and face. She wasn't even sure whether she had gotten hot or was getting more seriously ill. She just felt dizzy and almost couldn't hold on any longer. Countless times, I lowered my head and looked at my phone, hoping that the familiar ringtone would ring and that Brother Pei would call to ask where she was and if she was okay. Unfortunately, no matter how many times I check my phone, I am still disappointed. She didn't know that someone was following her, thinking that Brother Pei really didn't want her anymore. Her body was shaking, and she lost strength as she walked, so she squatted down in a green belt on the roadside. So tired, so thirsty, her lips were chapped and she wanted to drink water. She looked longingly at the stall selling soy milk not far away, but she didn't have a penny on her body. She misses the unfinished breakfast at home, the sponge cakes and mixed juices carefully prepared by Joe's mother. Brother Pei likes to drink clear coffee, and he will thoughtfully put sliced smoked chicken and ham on her plate. No, why do you miss him again? She doesn't want to think about that bad guy. Xiaoling hugged her knees and wanted to cry. She had run away from home, but he didn't come to find her. Lowering her eyes, she saw a silver bracelet on her wrist. It was given to her by Pei Xian a few months ago. Without having to touch it, she could clearly remember that the initials of their last name and 4 words were engraved on the inside of the bracelet. Never give up. They are all lies. Why don't you leave? How long has it been since you were so cruel to her and ignored her? Liar. She murmured, suddenly became angry, took off the bracelet on her wrist with force, and walked away from the distance. The bracelet quilt was still far away, rolled into a smelly ditch, and disappeared. Xiaoling looked in that direction, and after a few seconds, she stood up unsteadily. In the clear sunshine of early autumn, I saw a little girl wearing a thin dress walking with difficulty to the smelly ditch on the roadside, leaning down to look for something. After a long time, regardless of the dirty smell, she fished out a silver bracelet from the ditch. Come. Her body was covered in dirt, her face was covered with black mud, and her small hands that were originally as white as jade could no longer see their original color. However, when she picked up the bracelet, she smiled for a moment that many passers-by could see. Trance. She held the extremely dirty silver bracelet, looked left and right, staggered to a fountain in a shopping mall not far away, carefully washed the bracelet clean, and wiped it carefully with the hem of her skirt. Wipe. Then, he washed his hands and put the bracelet back on. The housekeeper who was following behind felt sour and told Joe's mother about this scene. Joe Ma told Pei Xian, Miss, I threw your bracelet out of anger and accidentally fell into the smelly ditch. I regretted it again. It took me a long time to fish it out. It was all dirty, but I was the first to clean the bracelet. Pei Xian felt as if something had stabbed him lightly in his heart, which made him feel a little throbbing and uncomfortable. How is she now? He asked. My dress is all dirty. I'm sitting by the fountain in Robin Square. I can't seem to walk. Joe's mother glanced at Pei Xian cautiously. Sir, the lady didn't eat anything today, and she was still wearing slippers. She left. After such a long journey, the housekeeper said her feet were blistered. Please stop being angry with her and bring her back. Pei Xian was silent for a moment and asked, Is her mobile phone still there? Always holding it in my hand. In other words, she could clearly contact him, but she refused to call him. Pei Xian became sullen again and his voice became deeper, let the butler continue to follow. Good night everybody. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1057. Chapter 1057. The little girl has grown up. Joe's mother wanted to persuade her again, but she knew it was useless, so she had no choice but to sigh and walk away. People were coming and going in the big square in front of the shopping mall. The uniformed security guard drove Xiaoling away. "Little girl, you can't wash things in this fountain. Where are your adults? Go to the side and wait for your adults." Xiaoling bit her lip and staggered away. Having just touched the cold water, her body was becoming more and more uncomfortable, her mind was dizzy, and she was a little dizzy under the dazzling sunlight. Walking in the crowd, she was surrounded by white-collar office workers walking in a hurry. Occasionally, a few children passed by with their parents laughing, stopped, and looked back at her curiously. She was alone, her dress was stained with black marks, and she had been hastily washed in the fountain water, which made her look even more miserable. She lowered her head and walked down a quiet alley. She could no longer walk under a mottled red brick wall, so she sat down with her back against the wall and took a rest. Just stop and go, always moving in the direction of the training camp. From morning to noon, and sometimes from noon to afternoon. The blisters on my feet were broken and bleeding. It was very painful. Xiaoling didn't know why she persisted. According to the situation, school should be over when she reaches the training camp. But she just didn't want to give up, or in other words, once she gave up, she didn't know where to go. Lowering her head, the small mobile phone in her palm was still quiet. Pei Ziyan didn't call her, not a single one. Does he really don't want her anymore? Xiaoling's eyes gradually gathered tears of grievance, and she sniffed hard to hold back. My feet had been in unbearable pain from walking for a long time, and my whole body was sore. Suddenly, I accidentally fell to the ground. "Yeah," she called out in a low voice, climbed up with difficulty, and moved to sit in front of a big tree by the roadside. The skin on his elbows and knees was scratched, and spots of blood oozed out. She refrained from crying, lowered her head, and licked her wounds like a small animal, feeling a little at a loss. This fall seemed to have taken away all her strength, and she could no longer walk. She sat under the big tree for a long time without regaining consciousness. Pei Ziyan was restless in the study. Today, he cancelled all his trips and paid attention to her news all the time. He warned himself not to worry about her, but the financial reports and project plans that he could read in an instant now turned into unknown characters, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't calm down. "Sir," Zhou Ma knocked on the door and brought him news about Xiaoling. Miss fell down in the alley at the end of Zhuhua Street. Her hands and feet were all torn and bleeding. She didn't have the strength to walk for a long time. Pei Ziyan dropped the documents in his hand on the table. "She hasn't eaten or drank a sip of water all day. Why is this child so stubborn?" "Sir, please don't get angry with Miss anymore," Zhou Ma earnestly advised. "She is still a child, what does she know? You have seen the world, you are older than her, and you are a man, so you should let her." Pei Ziyan's voice was cold. "Don't worry." "Sir," Zhou's mother was anxious, "Miss is still sick." "Get out." Pei Ziyan picked up the official document again. The study door was closed for an unknown number of times, and Zhou Ma had no choice but to retreat. Pei Ziyan couldn't read the official document, so he simply put it down again and stared at the setting sun outside the window in trance. What if she still refuses to come back until nightfall? A kind of uneasiness suddenly arose in his heart, empty and inexplicable. "As long as she admits her mistake, it will be fine," he whispered to himself. The setting sun became more and more brilliant, and the whole city was shrouded in the brilliance of the sunset. Half an hour passed and she still didn't call. Pei Ziyan lowered his eyes and looked at the phone. This time, he said to himself, "Xiaoling, come back. There is no need for her to admit her mistake. As long as she dials this number and calls Brother Pei, he will definitely pick her up as soon as possible, take her home, and take care of her with the best of everything. However, the phone never rang. Xiaoling didn't know how long she sat under the tree. Seeing the sky getting darker and the sunset glowing, she knew she couldn't stay here any longer. Drowsily, she stood up holding onto the tree trunk. When she lowered her head inadvertently, she was startled. There was a pool of dark red blood on the ground where she had just been sitting. She was injured. She reached out to touch behind herself, but found nothing. Her dress was wet and her hands were covered in blood. She looked at the blood on her hands and was frightened. What happened to her? I lost so much blood all of a sudden. Is the fever more serious? Or have other diseases? Will she die? Under the setting sun, the little girl looked pale and stood there at a loss. Joe's mother pushed Pei Xian's study away again. Sir. It's not good. Miss, she gasped and reported something very incoherently. Pei Xian stood up suddenly and grabbed Joe's mother. Speak clearly. What happened to Xiaoling? Ma Zhou was in pain from being caught by him, but she was very happy in her heart. She knew that he would not lose face and care about the young lady without scaring the husband. On the surface, he pretended to be anxious. The lady was hurt somewhere, and she bled a lot. It was too dark, and the housekeeper stood too far away to see clearly, but the lady was so frightened that her face changed. Before Zhou Ma could finish her words, Pei Xian rushed out like the wind. Zhou's mother looked at his hurried away figure, smiled slowly, and called the housekeeper. That's it. Sir is on his way to you. Please take good care of the lady. The lady has probably never learned about menstrual periods before. That's why I'm scared like this. The little girl is going to grow up. It's just menarche, it's not a big deal. Zhou's mother put down the phone and went to clean the house happily. The setting sun shines through the treetops on Xiaoling's body and the small pool of blood. Xiaoling was still staring at the small pool of blood, her face getting paler and paler. In just a few moments, countless thoughts had gone through her mind. If she got seriously ill, she wouldn't be able to become a big star, and she would have failed to live up to Brother Pei's expectations. What to do? What about Xiao Yu? The cold wind blew on her body, causing her to feel chilly. She was shaky and grief-stricken. Pei Xian's car stopped on the opposite side of the road. Through the car window, the first thing he saw was the fragile and desperate eyes of the little girl under the tree. He didn't have time to close the car door, so he walked through the red light dangerously and came to her side. He grabbed her thin arm and said, "How are you? Where are you injured?" The familiar voice made Xiaoling's heart skip a beat. She looked up and saw the young man standing in front of her. His tall figure looked like a against the light. She cried immediately, "Brother Pei!" She hugged him desperately and buried her head in his arms. "I spent a whole day driving around today and didn't arrive at the hotel until 7 o'clock, so I'll update as soon as possible. I finally came out of Kanaz, where there is no bathroom. Cry and scatter flowers. So, I'm going to eat now. I need to take a good rest tonight, take a shower, wash clothes, and so on. I'll do the second update tonight, and there will be another update after I finish eating and take a shower. You can go to bed first." End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1058. Chapter 1058 Reconciliation. She thought she was going to die, and the moment she saw him, it was like she saw the Savior. The familiar breath on his body was reassuring, and she held onto the corner of his clothes tightly and never let go. Pei Xian squatted down and checked her up and down. "Where is the injury? Is it bleeding?" She said in confusion, I don't know." There was no trace of anger. Pei Xian looked at her carefully again and found dirt on the back of her skirt near her thighs. He asked, "Do you feel the bleeding? Does it hurt?" She shook her head. I just sat there. When I got up, there was a lot of blood, but it didn't hurt. After thinking about it, she added in a low voice, it seems like my stomach hurts a little. Brother Pei, am I going to die? Don't talk nonsense, he scolded, roughly understanding what was going on. Although he is a man, he is not inexperienced, and he still has some superficial understanding of such private matters in women's homes. A big stone fell to the ground in her heart, as long as she wasn't injured in any way. Gently, he comforted her, it's okay, it's just a small problem. I'll take you home right now and let Mother Joe handle it for you. Mother Joe, she asked doubtfully. She had lost so much blood, didn't she need a doctor? Well, Mom Joe, Pei Zion was still very gentle, I told you it's okay, there's no need for a doctor. Mom Joe will take good care of you, and then you just go to bed and lie down, and I'll find a doctor to check your fever. Okay, hearing what he said, she suddenly became less afraid. He held her hand and got into the car. On the soft back seat of the car, Pei Zion reached out and wanted to take her into his arms. She whispered, I'm dirty. Pei Zion said, it's okay. He hugged her carefully and put the blanket in the carriage on her body. Neither of them mentioned the quarrel during the day, and she fell asleep in his arms. After arriving at the villa, he woke her up and handed her over to Joe's mother. Joe's mother had already prepared toiletries, helped her take a bath, and kindly told her what happened during menstrual bleeding. Xiaoling then realized that every girl would go through the step. Recalling the panic and crying in Pei Zion's arms today, her face burned red. So embarrassing, I'm almost too embarrassed to see him. She lay back on the bed shyly, and the family doctor came to take her temperature and prescribed medicine. After taking the medicine, she fell into a deep sleep. She slept for a day and a night, only waking up a few times and drinking a little porridge. At dusk on the third day, she finally woke up. Where is Brother Pei? She regained a little energy and asked Joe's mother while lying on the bed and drinking medicine. Joe's mother said, my husband went to the company to deal with matters. That day you ran out in anger. My husband was very worried and postponed the scheduled formation. He was so busy these 2 days that he didn't sleep much. Xiaoling was startled, he postponed the trip. Is that possible? Joe's mother said, Miss, sir, he is worried about you and has been sending the housekeeper to follow you. Otherwise, why do you think he could find you so quickly? Xiaoling suddenly didn't know what to say. That day, she was so aggrieved and angry, thinking that he no longer cared about her, but she didn't expect that he always cared about her. Warmth and guilt surged in my heart. How much trouble had she caused him? I heard Joe's mother say, Miss, my husband has not been close to his brothers and sisters at home since he was a child. He is used to living alone and doesn't know how to get along with others. In fact, he is kind to you. You want more, be considerate of him and don't be angry with him, otherwise he will be sad. Xiaoling nodded, feeling even more guilty. At night, she lay awake on her little bed until 1 o'clock in the morning, when Pei Zion returned home exhausted. Through a screen, she noticed that the soft bedroom lights were on, and then there was the sound of him taking off his clothes, and the sound of the bathroom door opening and closing. Finally, he came out of the bathroom and got ready for bed. She got up from the crib and walked out of the screen. Brother Pei, she called out slightly. Pei Zion turned around and saw her, a little surprised. Xiaoling, why aren't you asleep yet? He was casually wearing a black satin nightgown, with water drops flowing on his open chest, looking and toned. Xiaoling has never noticed this before, but tonight, for some reason, she blushed slightly. I. She paused and looked away unnaturally. I'm here to apologize to you. I shouldn't have lost my temper that day and made you worry. It turned out to be this. Pei Zion smiled, you know you are wrong. She still didn't dare to look at him. Pei Xian thought she was not fully recovered yet, so he stepped forward, pulled her head, and measured the temperature on her forehead with the back of his hand. "The fever is gone," he said. "Why is your face still so red?" She blushed even harder, turned around and ran away. Pei Xian was startled for a moment, and then he thought about it. It was probably the little girl who was apologizing to him. He was shy, so he didn't take it to heart. Feeling relaxed, he got into his bed and soon fell asleep. Xiaoling tossed and turned and didn't sleep well all night. When he got up the next day, he said to Pei Xian, "Brother Pei, I listened to you. Let's go to school." "Figured out." "I figured it out," Xiaoling said, but she was still a little depressed. "I shouldn't let you worry about me, you are already so good to me." She would make up for the hour she wasted on the road every day with her sleeping time. Return. Pei Xian seemed to see through her mind. "You prefer living on campus, right?" She hesitated and nodded. Pei Xian poured a glass of milk for her and watched her drink it little by little. Although this little girl was willful, she would aggrieve herself for his wishes, which made Pei Xian feel an inexplicable satisfaction in his heart. "As a reward," he said, "then go live on campus." "Huh?" She raised her head in surprise. "I will find someone to say hello to the training camp and drive Li Bingman out of the independent dormitory," Pei Xian said. In fact, deep down in his heart, he still didn't want her to live on campus, but when she had a fever that day, the family doctor said that the young lady was in poor health and was a little weak. If she did high-intensity training like a training camp for a long time, she would have to go back and forth. Running around can easily make you sick from exhaustion. After hearing these words, Pei Xian began to think about letting her live on campus. The reason why he delayed telling her until today was because he couldn't bear it. More importantly, she bowed to him yesterday, which showed that she was willing to give up her persistence for him, which was a good sign. Xiaoling's thoughts were not as complicated as his. She just felt moved. "Brother Pei, you are so kind." Pei Xian said warmly, "Ask Mama Zhou to pack your luggage. When you get to school, go to Principal Xia first. He will accompany you to drive Li Bingman out. Since his little girl wants to go back, she will go back in glory." "What Li Bingman? If you offend her, you have to pay the price." This is the second update last night. Well, I fell asleep halfway through writing. XJ traveling is really harder than expected. Today I took the train from Baitan to WLMQ, victory is in sight. I will update on time when I return to Shanghai. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1059. Chapter 1059, Return to Training Camp. Xiaoling rested at home for a few more days, recovered from her illness, and returned to school. This time, she didn't drag her suitcase at all and went directly to the principal's office. When passing by the corridor, she met two girls from the same class. They pointed at her and whispered, "Look, isn't that Xiaoling? It's so shameful that a chief can't even keep a dormitory. We don't need this in first grade. Where's the chief?" "That's right, let's give the chief position to Li Bingman as soon as possible, so as not to embarrass everyone." Xiaoling suddenly turned around and stared at them fiercely. The two girls were startled by her eyes and immediately shut up. Xiaoling then continued to walk forward. Behind her, the two girls continued to whisper, "What's so great? A country girl has learned to glare at others. She doesn't even know what she is. Li Bingman robbed the dormitory and hid at home for a week before coming out to see anyone. What a coward!" Xiaoling's ears were very good, so the two of them thought they spoke very quietly, but she still heard them. This time she exploded, turned around and rushed towards the two girls, pushing one of them to the ground with just one push. "Are you so amazing? What do you have to say in front of me? You are talking behind your back. What's the matter? Come on." Her fierce look frightened the two of them. It took the girl who was pushed down by her a long time to react and screamed, "You, how dare you push me? Xiaoling, you are dead. Don't you know that fighting is prohibited in the training camp?" Another girl also screamed, "We have to tell the disciplinary committee. Just wait for us." Xiaoling looked sideways at her, and this time, she kicked her to the ground. The girl was caught off guard, and she and her companion fell together with an ouch sound. When they landed, they crushed their companion's feet, causing the other to burst into tears. "It hurts. Get started." The two girls yelled together. They were all shocked. They had warned Xiaoling that they would report it to the disciplinary committee, but she still dared to be violent. But she didn't know that Xiaoling's idea was that she was going to be sued anyway, so she just kept doing nothing and took a few more hits to get enough. Thinking of this, she kicked her foot up again. "I'm calling you a bitch." "Stop, wild girl," suddenly, a voice shouted. Xiaoling and the two girls on the ground turned around and saw that Li Bingman had hurried over with a few people and was standing a few steps away from them, looking at Xiaoling with an unfriendly expression. "Sister Bingman. Discipline members." The two girls shouted in unison, "Please take care of Xiaoling, she is really lawless." Li Bingman's beautiful face is covered with delicate light makeup. She looks much more mature than her actual age, like an adult woman. She looked at Xiaoling majestically. "Are you causing trouble?" "Yeah, so what?" Xiaoling held her head high, not afraid of her. Brother Pei had already said that he would kick her out of the single-room dormitory. Unfortunately, Li Bingman didn't know that she was in danger. When she thought of this, Xiaoling was so happy that she couldn't help but laugh. "You are so lenient, take care of yourself first." Be presumptuous. This time, it was a boy next to Li Bingman with a straight face. "Teach her a lesson. Do you know who you are talking to? Bingman is our squad leader. Is this your attitude towards the squad leader?" "What? Monitor?" Xiaoling blinked and was stunned. How did she remember Xia Hua said that only the head teacher of each academic year is qualified to be the class president? She put the question in her heart and looked at them with a sneer. "What qualifications does Li Bingman have to be the monitor?" "I'm so sorry," Li Bingman also sneered, with no sign of apology on her beautiful and proud face. "Originally, the class president of each class is the president of the school year, but who told you that this school year's president does not live up to his name? Just now I've been missing for a week since the beginning of school. What should I do with the other students? I have to work harder and be the monitor." Obviously she was the one who stole Xiaoling's position, but she made it sound like she was helping Xiaoling clean up the mess. Xiaoling didn't want to accept her trick. She raised her chin and said, "Really? Now that I'm back, you can return this position to me. Speaking of which, it's hard work for you to help me manage the class for so long. I'll wait. If you come to me and get $10, consider it a reward." This stinky girl. Li Bingman was so angry that she almost exploded. What was going on with this stinky girl's condescending tone? What is a reward? As if she were her subordinate. Also, it's only $10. Sending beggars away. Even an idiot can tell that Xiaoling is deliberately humiliating Li Bingman. Li Bingman gave the discipline committee member next to her a hard look. This discipline committee member has been flattering Li Bingman and supporting her since she entered school, so she got her current position. When he saw Li Bingman's eyes, he immediately understood and stepped forward to scold Xiaoling. "You stinky girl, you still want to be the class president. You also need to ask the other students in our class committee if they agree. Stop being ridiculous, if you continue to mess around, you will only be treated as a joke." "It's not clear who is the joke," Xiaoling squinted at him. The discipline committee member sneered, I don't know what's wrong. Xiaoling, you just beat 2 classmates and you have already violated the school rules. Now I will punish you to run 100 laps on the playground. You will not be allowed to eat or go to class until you finish. Go. I don't, Xiaoling ignored him. The disciplinary committee member and Li Bingman looked at each other and saw gloating in each other's eyes. Xiaoling, I advise you to run now. Maybe you can get back home before dark. If you can't finish running, haha, just blow the cold wind on the playground all night. This stinky girl, do you think just refusing to run is enough? In the Emperor training camp, the class committee has great power. If the class committee makes a decision to punish a certain trainee, even the teacher will support it. For example, if the discipline committee member does not let Xiaoling go to class, then after she finishes before 100 laps, even if you go to the classroom, you will be kicked out by the teacher. The entertainment industry is a hierarchical place, and the training camp is just a small entertainment industry. Xiaoling doesn't know these rules and doesn't have the patience to know them. She only knew that she belonged to Brother Pei, who had already told the principal that he wanted to help her seek justice. Since Li Bingman went through the back door through her sister's relationship to get the single room and squad leader positions that belonged to the chief, then, it is only natural for her to take back what originally belonged to her through stronger relationships. Ding-ling-ling, the school bell rang. Xiaoling glanced at them, snorted coldly, turned around and continued walking towards the principal's office. The playground is over there, someone laughed loudly at her, country girl, you just talk so much, aren't you scared now? You don't even dare to enter the classroom, hurry up and go for a run, ha ha ha. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 1060. Chapter 1060, Principal Shat. Xiaoling originally wanted to go to the principal's office first, but after being so provoked, she refused to leave. Didn't they laugh at her and dare not enter the classroom? Okay, then she will go in and show them. She held her head high, and followed the turbulent flow of people into the classroom under the various eyes of everyone. This period is a dance class. Everyone is standing in a neat line on the wooden floor, waiting for the teacher to arrive. The dance teacher was Haydena, a female teacher in her 30s. As soon as she stepped into the classroom, she was keenly aware that the atmosphere today was somewhat unusual. She glanced around and her eyes fell on Xiaoling, new here. Teacher, my name is Xiaoling, the girl's clear voice was very pleasant. The president of this academic year took a week's sick leave last week because of feeling unwell. Zhang Lei roughly understood. He had long heard that the freshmen of this class were not peaceful. Li Binjiu's biological sister Li Bingman was fighting to the death with a country girl who had appeared halfway. It seemed that Xiaoling was that girl. But this girl is different from the rumors. She seems to be in good shape, beautiful, and a good prospect. She nodded slightly, let's start class. She is not their academic director. She can't control the internal fighting among students. She can just do her job well. Unexpectedly, the discipline committee member spoke up, teacher, wait. This Xiaoling violated the school rules. I punished her by running 100 laps on the playground, but she hasn't run yet. According to the regulations, you must drive her out of the classroom. Teacher Haydena frowned. She didn't want to interfere, but she didn't expect trouble to come to her. Then go and run, she said to Xiaoling. This is the rule of the training camp. Anyway, you have missed a week of classes, and you don't care about this day. Since you are here, you must abide by the rules here. I am the class president of the school year and should be the monitor of this class, no qualifications. I am a squad leader, why should I obey their orders? Haydena was speechless, but she applauded this little girl in her heart, what a courage and courage. But this is not something that she, a mere teacher, should get involved in. She said, "This is an internal matter for you freshmen and has nothing to do with me." In the list published by the school, Li Bingman is the monitor and Chen Bai is the discipline committee member. I must follow. If you have any objections, you can appeal to the school, but now I must ask you to leave the class. Xiaoling just refused to leave. "I won't." Haydena had a good impression of this little girl and couldn't bear to see her being bullied anymore, so she said, "Quickly leave. If you don't leave, the class committee has the right to ask someone to take you out." "Who dares?" Xiaoling looked around, her cold eyes making many people's hearts skip a beat. Then she turned around and continued to say to Haydena, "Teacher, I came here today to deal with this matter. Just when I was about to go to Principal Sha, they started making trouble for me unreasonably, so I came to class first. I'm sorry to bother you. Go tell Principal Sha that I'm here and ask him to come over and deal with my matter first, and give me justice. This girl has such a strong tone." This time, let alone the other trainees, even Haydena took a breath of air. It's a good thing for a little girl to be courageous, but too much courage can turn into recklessness. Who does she think Principal Sha is? Is he her Sharpei? Just let her come and go at the drop of a hat? Principal Sha has so many things to do, how can he have time to deal with these little things? Even Haydena was a little unhappy this time. Don't be ignorant of good and evil. Xiaoling was even more angry. The teacher actually said that she was ignorant. She was clearly the one being bullied, and those bad students were the ones who didn't know what was good or bad. Xiaoling said, "Then I'll go find Principal Sha." As soon as he turned around, he walked out. He walked in a hurry and bumped into a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man with a big belly and a kind face stretched out his hand to support Xiaoling and said with a smile, "Where are you going, little girl? You are in a hurry, so be careful when you fall." "Get out of the way." Xiaoling was in a bad mood now. "I'm going to find Principal Sha." "This is Principal Sha." Haydena couldn't help but speak out in the classroom. She just wanted to raise her eyebrows. She had vague doubts about whether this girl had anything to do with Principal Sha, but now she saw that she didn't even know who Principal Sha was. Out of a cherished mentality, she became worried about this girl again, despite Principal Sha's friendly appearance on the surface. In fact, people called him Smiling Tiger behind his back. How could he be able to hold the position of principal for 6 or 7 years in the Emperor training camp with such fierce competition and complicated situation, and still be as stable as a rock after having experienced 2 generations of the old chairman and Pei Ziyan at the helm? How could he be such a simple person? Xiaoling looked up at the middle-aged man. "Are you Principal Sha?" Before Principal Sha could answer, Li Bingman already laughed out loud in the classroom. "You don't even know Principal Sha? You still think about disturbing him with such trivial matters? You are really overestimating your capabilities." As he said this, he felt superior. The feeling arose spontaneously. When she came to the training camp, her sister Li Binjai especially took her to visit Principal Sha. At that time, Principal Sha personally gave up her seat to her sister and even asked the secretary to drink the best biluakun. Other students saw Li Bingman speaking and laughed at him. "You really take yourself seriously." Those who were brave said, "Principal Sha, ignore her, she is just an unreasonable and silly girl who makes trouble for Sister Bingman all day long, causing Sister Bingman to suffer a lot of grievances. Who is wronging whom?" Xiaoling was furious. Just as she was about to retort, Principal Sha had already said to her in a pleasant tone, "Yes, I am Principal Sha. What is your name, little girl? Are they bullying you?" Everyone was shocked. What happened to Principal Sha today? Why did you help a wild girl you didn't even know without asking what was right? But they don't know that Principal Sha doesn't know Xiaoling's name. A few days ago, when Pei Ziyan's secretary Zhou came to say hello in person, he asked him to take good care of Xiaoling by name, and said sincerely that even she couldn't afford to offend this girl. How old is Principal Sha? How could I not hear what Secretary Joe meant? The person she can't even afford to offend must be from Pei Xian's side. Principal Sha's scalp went numb when he thought of Xiaoling's background. He didn't want anything to happen to this little ancestor in the training camp, otherwise he wouldn't even be able to hold the position of principal that he had held for so many years, not to mention getting a raise and promotion. It may not be possible to keep it. As soon as Secretary Joe was sent away, Principal Sha quickly checked Xiaoling's information. The little girl was so beautiful and her face was impressive. After seeing the photo, he recognized the girl in front of him at a glance. End of this chapter.